Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2021 National Railway Heritage Awards. It's a real pleasure to be back here today after the virtual event last year, and I welcome you all and thank you for coming, and also welcome to everybody who's watching us live. We had 600 people saw last year's event virtually, so we're certainly repeating that, and I hope we've got a good live audience and a virtual one as well. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andy Savage. I'm one of the trustees of the National Rail Heritage Awards, and I wasn't supposed to be here today. Our chairman, Theo Steele, sadly passed away in October, and so I'm acting chairman in his place at the moment. Theo was born in 1949, joined BR in 1970, and had an illustrious career. He was assistant general manager on both East Anglia and Great Western. He worked on Channel Tunnel Rail Link and actually shared an office with our guest of honour, Andrew Haynes. He worked as Managing Director of Regional Railways South Wales and West, and I was his civil engineer for South Wales in those days. He then went to London and Continental, to Great Eastern, where he was Managing Director, and finished his railway career directly about 2004, but continued to work on the Olympics, Renaissance Southend, Essex Development Agency. It's appropriate that we're here because Theo was a freeman of the City of London and a liveryman of the Merchant Tailors, and indeed he held his 70th birthday party in this very room. Theo always had an interest in architecture, particularly the architecture of James Miller, which will please our Scottish friends, and he offered to join the awards as a judge in 2012, rapidly became an adjudicator, joined the committee in 2018, and became chairman after the 2019 ceremony. He chaired last year's awards, which were virtual, but sadly wasn't able to ever chair a live event. Could I ask you all just to stand briefly in Theo's memory? Thank you very much. It's also a great pleasure to have Stephen Brindle back with us again, and I will now invite Stephen to take us through the ceremony.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So wonderful to see you here. Hard to believe the last time we were all here was 3 years ago. Well, despite the circumstances, we've had a bumper crop of excellent entries, as I hope you will see during the course of this presentation. And if there's one strand, one common factor, it is that the most successful, the best, see cooperation. They embody cooperation between all those involved in the ownership and management of the structures. It's what the railway industry is all about. Sadly, that's not always the case, and our judges and adjudicators found that a number of otherwise excellent projects were slightly marred by lack of that kind of coordination. As always, we need to start by expressing our great thanks to all our sponsors. Without their support, these awards would be impossible to put on, and we're immensely grateful to them for continuing their backing through these unprecedented times. But now let's turn to the awards themselves, and we begin with the BAM Nuttall Partnership Award. This is given for the greatest heritage improvement works made to any historic railway structure as part of a jointly funded project. There are 3 shortlisted candidates this year, and the first is for the restoration of the rooms at Kilmarnock Station, occupied by the Kilmarnock Station Railway Heritage Trust. This Grade B listed station was built for the Glasgow and South Western Railway and completed in 1877 to replace an earlier structure opened in 1843. The station became very neglected during the 1970s, and over the years, the condition of many of the interiors deteriorated to the point where most of their original features were lost. On taking on the project, the entrants were faced effectively by a bare shell with bare brick walls. but with funding from a number of sources, including the Railway Heritage Trust, ScotRail, the Robertson Trust and the Renewable Energy Fund, work on the project was completed in December 2020. Although the bulk of the work undertaken was within the buildings, externally, all of the windows and doors were repaired, refurbished or replaced the original pattern. Encouraged by the restoration, additional work was completed on the platform canopy and the roof. Internally, all the rooms have been refurbished and any original features, like columns, retained. The Station Trust have been very successful in finding a range of community, charity and commercial uses for the offices and rooms created, thus ensuring their future. This project has safeguarded a large prominent building in the middle of Kilmarnock. At platform level, it has brought new life to the station, and from the outside, the building looks as good as it has always done, which is particularly important as it is the focus for the view along one of the main streets in the town centre. The second shortlisted candidate was made by Network Rail and covers the restoration of the canopy at Pembroke Dock. Pembroke Dock Station, Grade 2 listed, was originally opened by the Pembroke and Tenby Railway in 1864 to serve the Royal Naval Dockyard in the town. The station originally had 2 platforms, though only the southern one remains in use. The condition of the canopy had become very poor. It was no longer watertight, and many sections of the corrugated PVC covering were disintegrated or had blown away. Work commenced in July 2019 on a 16-month project to repair it. Once the remaining roofing was removed, metalwork and timbers were inspected. The former was sandblasted, repaired or replaced when corrosion required it, treated with red oxide paint and repainted. The timbers were similarly repaired, though in some areas modest replacement was needed. Such is the quality of the work that it is hard to distinguish between original and replacement. Attention was given to the stone walls, remortaring with appropriate lime mortars. New glazing is of the twin fix system, and the panels incorporate frequent hatches, allowing easy access to the roof for cleaning and maintenance. This is a well-executed scheme which has enhanced the waiting environment for passengers, not least the improved natural lighting achieved by replacing the out-of-character PVC panels. And the final candidate was entered by the Stow Community Trust and covers the restoration of the unlisted station house at Stow in the Scottish borders. Located on the North British Railways route from Edinburgh to Carlisle via Howick, Stow Station originally opened in 1848. The building provided both living accommodation for the staff as well as a ticket office and waiting room for passengers. The demise of the Waverley route in 1969 resulted in the closure of Stow Station, but the station house survived. It was converted into cottages, with another one built on the trackbed. The proposed reopening of the line through to Tweed Bank, completed in 2015, originally did not include a station at Stow, but an intense local campaign changed all that. This resulted in the threat of demolition for the now vacant station house to become part of a car park, but a further campaign saved the building too. In January 2020, work started on the restoration of the building. The work was funded by no fewer than 8 different bodies, and externally it included re-roofing using as many of the original slates as possible, the replacement of rainwater goods with replicas made of cast iron, repointing and repair to the stonework, and reinstatement of the original main door. A modern extension in an appropriate railway style has been added. Internally, the building was stripped back to bare brickwork, a consequence of damage caused in the years after it became empty. The replacement plasterwork, however, replicates the original cornices and high ceiling, while the shutters, architrave and skirting have been reinstated. The whole scheme is a great credit to the community and being in a relatively remote area will again provide a draw to help people enjoy this part of the country and help Stow thrive. So which of this attractive trio is the winner of the BAM Nuttall Partnership Award 2021? I'm pleased to announce that the award of the BAM Nuttall Partnership Award for 2021 goes to the Kilmarnock Station Railway Heritage Trust for restoring and bringing back into use so successfully the derelict rooms at Kilmarnock Station. Sadly, no one from the Trust is able to join us today, so I'd like to invite John Yellowlees to receive the award on their behalf from Hugh Jones, Rail Director of BAM Nuttall. Thank you. The GWR Craft Skills Award recognises the best use of traditional craft skills in restoring a heritage building or structure. And again, there are 3 shortlisted projects for this award. The first was entered by Colt Construction Limited for work undertaken at Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire. This ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway station, which was rebuilt during the last decade of the 19th century, is listed at Grade 2. The main building underwent major refurbishment in 1997. In February 2020, work started on a 6-month project to ensure its preservation of this visually attractive station. The existing roofs were in poor condition with damp, split and damaged timbers. Where possible, the roof structure was repaired, but the hipped roof to the east wing was in such poor condition that full replacement was required. As far as possible, slates were recovered for reuse, and it is difficult to distinguish the replacements from the original. The first floor windows were in poor condition and single glazed. These have been replaced with new timber windows, the original design incorporating thin double glazing to improve the building's thermal performance and safety. Other work included attention to the rainwater goods and a comprehensive repaint for the station, as well as the adjacent, though now redundant, signal box, which also dates to 1891, and the associated station buildings. The work at Hebden Bridge has been completed to the usual high standards associated with this contractor, and the project will ensure that this significant and high-profile station is secure for future generations. The second shortlisted entry was also made by Colt Construction Limited for the replacement of the rainwater goods at Huddersfield Station. The station was designed by James Pigott Pritchett and constructed between 1846 and 1850. It was funded by the Huddersfield and Manchester Railway and Canal Company and the Manchester and Leeds Railway. The station frontage was described as the most splendid in England by Sir John Betjeman, and the building was listed in 1952. The drainage system along the platform elevation of the main building takes water from both the building and part of the train shed. Over the years, many of the original downpipes had become damaged and blocked. Some had been replaced with circular sections or UPVC alternatives. In November 2019, work started on a project to refurbish the existing system to make it capable of handling a 1-in-50-year storm. Due to the condition of the existing rainwater downpipes, they were replaced in full with new cast iron half-moon profiles, closely replicating the original designs. Custom castings were made to replicate the historic profiles and offsets, allowing for connections so as to connect to the gutter and below ground drainage. This is an excellent scheme demonstrating how even an apparently mundane repair of a drainage system can be carried out in a sensitive way, respecting the heritage of a really important historic station. The third shortlisted candidate was entered by Transport for London and comprises the restored arcade above Victoria Underground Station. Designed by George Sherrin, the Grade 2 listed shopping arcade was built in the early 20th century following the electrification of the District Railway, which allowed the ventilation areas over the station to be covered in. The offices above the arcade were added in the 1920s on pre-prepared foundations. Originally, the arcade comprised similarly styled shops with elegant, intricately patterned wood finishes, but over time these were restyled in a variety of styles. The original clientele clearly had been upmarket and specialist, but the quality of the retailers deteriorated. In 2019, Transport for London started a refurbishment project to restore the arcade, and the work was completed in this year. The project involved the restoration of the exterior of the listed building, with repairs to the rusticated stonework and the classical embellishments on the Terminus Place facade, and to the high-level 1920s concrete canopy on Victoria Street. This included restoration of the 1930s London Transport bronze-framed signage panel cases with their blue vitreous enamel inserts. The interior works entailed the stripping out of all the modern shop fronts that had replaced most of the original Edwardian interiors. Exact replicas of the surviving Edwardian shop fronts were made with the same mouldings and ornamental scroll details. A handful of the original marble stall risers had been retained below modern facades, and these were carefully conserved. Where necessary, replacement marble was sourced and incorporated. The work undertaken at Victoria is exemplary in terms of retaining and restoring Britain's railway heritage. The restored arcade exudes quality and is unrecognisable from its condition a few years ago. Three very contrasting projects. So which entry has won the GWR Craft Skills Award 2021? Well, the winner is Transport for London for the transformation of the once degraded and compromised arcade at London Victoria. So please step forward Edmund Bird from Transport for London to receive the GWR Craft Skills Award plaque from Jane Jones, Head of Public Affairs at GWR. We now move on to the Auch Company Urban Heritage Award. This award recognises the success of a train operator, station owner, or other partnership in ensuring high-quality upkeep and enhancement of the environment in a significant urban station within its care, so as to perpetuate its historic ambience consistent with modern requirements. And again, there are three shortlisted entries. The first of these was entered by Irish Rail for work undertaken at Broadstone in Dublin. Constructed by the Midland Great Western Railway in the early 1860s, the building that encompasses this entry was initially built as a locomotive works. A further 5 bays were subsequently added for carriage construction and maintenance. Following the closure of the associated Broadstone Station in 1937, the railway's use of the building declined, though it was still accessible to locomotives until 1961. From 1937, the building was primarily used for the overhaul of buses, with an additional bay being added in 1970. However, the bus repair work ceased in 1986, and for almost 30 years, the building was largely unused and its condition deteriorated. In 2016, work commenced on a project completed in March 2020 to restore the building to its operational use for the maintenance of the Dublin bus fleet. The old erecting shop roof was repaired by making use of the original cast iron pillars and wrought iron roof trusses and beams. The machine shop needed a brand new roof. This was built with new wooden beams and trusses, copying the original 1860 structure. In the case of the old paint shop bay, the original beams and trusses were retained by splicing in steel bases to the damaged bearing ends. Internally, the work has included conservation of the original cast iron columns, as well as the wrought iron roof trusses and beams. Other historic features, like the overhead beams of the overhead cranes in the erecting shop, have been retained, even though no longer operational, and the windows and doors have been carefully repaired. This is an excellent example of reassigning use of a historic railway building and retaining its original structure and its original character. Irish Rail is to be highly congratulated on this huge investment and on their dedication to retaining this fine building. The second shortlisted entry in this category came from Network Rail, Northern and Gorilla Brothers Limited for work at Knaresborough Station, involving the conversion of rooms into the track and sleeper ale and gin bar. The Grade 2 listed station was opened in 1851 and was rebuilt in 1866, buildings designed by Thomas Prosser for the North Eastern Railway. The building was extended at its east end in 1866. The rooms that comprised the entry were probably originally waiting rooms. For a number of years, they were used for a variety of other purposes. However, they have been largely empty for almost a quarter of a century, and as a result, they deteriorated, with many of the period details being lost. Work began in March 2021 on a project to convert the space into a new public house. The work was undertaken concurrently with the completion of a 2-year network rail project to restore the external fabric. This work included re-roofing, matching new slate where necessary, and careful repairs to the brickwork and pointing. And attention was also given to the canopy and rainwater goods. Internally, those surviving features, such as coving and architraves, were restored and, where necessary, replicated with new material. Original doors were salvaged and restored before being rehung, and the new work has been very carefully integrated. This is an imaginative and welcome use of what had become a neglected part of this station, which is in the centre of the town, and the entrants are to be commended for what they have achieved with this part of the station. The final entry for this award has been made by Network Rail for the restoration of the departure side transept and arch at London Paddington. The entry comprises part of the Grade 1 listed station, designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel and Matthew Digby Wyatt, and built between 1851 and 1854. The north transept gable was modified in 1922 for the installation of the Great Western Railway's War Memorial. Originally, the 18-month programme commenced with a prime objective to halt the deterioration of the fabric due to water damage, thermal movement of the train shed roof, and address the problem of debris falling from height within the transept. Work on the project was completed in June 2021. One priority for the work was the restoration of the War Memorial to ensure its completion for Remembrance Day. Of particular note was the discovery that the roof over the oriel balconies was not built of metal, as expected, but is a cast concrete shell. The work on the features is extensive and included repair and reconstruction of damaged and missing details, as well as a complete redecoration. In addition, work was undertaken on the mortar and rendering, particularly at high levels, where the damage was most severe. Paddington Station is undergoing a complete restoration, and this project is a smaller part of a wider upgrade. All the workmanship on this entry is to a high standard and sets a high benchmark for the future there. 3 very varied and interesting entries, but which was most successful in the eyes of our adjudicators? I'm pleased to announce that the Auch Company Urban Heritage Award for 2021 goes to Gorilla Brothers Limited, Network Rail and Northern for the excellent work at Knaresborough Station. And so I'd like to invite Jason White and Philip Paling from Gorilla Brothers Limited and Paul Milnes from Northern up to receive their award from Rob McAuliffe, Head of IMT at the Auch Company, please. And next, we come to the Structures Restoration Award, sponsored by Costain. This award is given for the best restoration, modification, or adaptation for new use of any historic railway or tramway civil engineering structure. There are 3 shortlisted entries. The first of these was made by Story Contracting and Network Rail for the refurbishment of the Auch or Horseshoe Viaduct near Tyndrum on the West Highland line in Scotland. This 9-span viaduct was opened in 1894 when the completion of the North British Railways line from Craigendoran to Fort William. Each of the spans comprises 2 external steel girders supporting 19 transverse cross girders with a longitudinal timber deck. Work commenced in June 2019 on a 7-month project to install a new deck and undertake metalwork strengthening to all 9 spans. The complex work included the use of freestanding scaffolding, as the viaduct itself could not support the loading. The remote and almost inaccessible location made the work particularly challenging. The work undertaken included repairs to the concrete piers, the removal and replacement of the timber deck, and the strengthening of the steelwork. It also involved installation of new cross girders and a new inspection walkway below the main deck. All involved in the restoration of this important Victorian viaduct deserve credit, as the completed works are to a very impressive standard, and the structure is now fit for purpose for many years ahead. The second shortlisted entry was made by the Severn Valley Railway Charitable Trust for the restoration of Falling Sands Viaduct near Kidderminster. This 7-arch brick viaduct was built by the Great Western Railway in 1878. Although passenger services over the route ceased in 1970, freight traffic continued until 1982. And 2 years later, the Severn Valley Railway took over ownership. Over recent years, the condition of the viaduct deteriorated, with the result that a 12-month project to restore it began in December 2019. The project has included temporary removal of track and excavation of the fill above the arches to allow the brick structure to be waterproofed and drained. Perished brickwork has been placed in the piers and arches and areas repointed where lost mortar had threatened the structure's integrity. During the 1970s, British Rail had demolished the parapets and rebuilt them in plain brickwork. This had resulted in the loss of sections of distinctive corbelled string courses. Although it wasn't needed structurally, the decision was made to restore both the western piers and to use GRP to reconstruct the missing sections of the string course. The latter choice was a pragmatic one. Like-for-like replacement was impractical, but the result has been to restore the original look of the viaduct. Overall, the project achieves a very positive end result, both operationally and in terms of its contribution to its historic setting. Reinstatement of the missing string courses and the end piers to the parapet elevates this well above a simple maintenance project. The entrant didn't need to do those elements of the work. The final shortlisted entry was made by Network Rail for work undertaken on the famous Ribblehead Viaduct. This grade 2-star viaduct was designed by John Sidney Crossley for the Midland Railway and opened with the settled Carlisle line in May 1876. With 24 arches extending over 440 yards, the viaduct is the longest on the route. Fully restored some 30 years ago, when its poor condition threatened the whole future of the Settle line, work began in October 2020 on a 6-month project to ensure that the structure will remain viable for a further generation. Examiners highlighted the fact that the viaduct was showing signs of wear and localised defects, including fractures in the masonry arch barrels and piers. Damaged stone was removed and replaced by matching stone sourced locally, installed and pointed to ensure a match and maintain the integrity of the structure, work which was informed through sampling and laboratory analysis of the materials. The investigation also investigated that there were blocked hoppers and exposed metalworks in the downpipes and the patras plates prone to corrosion. And all of the downpipes and patras plates were prepared prior to receiving a 2-part metallic paint system. And to avoid problems with the hoppers, which had required regular clearance previously, they've been replaced with bespoke cast iron effect larger lidded units. Network Rail has run an extremely slick and efficient project in very difficult conditions, and in this and the attention to detail and the background research and working with all the partners concerned, they are to be congratulated. So 3 spectacular schemes here for our adjudicators to decide on. But the winner of the Costain Structures Award 2021 is Story Contracting and Network Rail for the complex restoration of Auch Viaduct. So would Stuart Miller and David Kelly from Story Contracting please join us on the stage to receive the award from Andrew Haynes. Unfortunately, due to ill health, no one from Costain can be with us today. The London Underground Operational Enhancement Award is given for the scheme that demonstrates the greatest improvement in user accessibility while maintaining the location's historic features. There are 3 shortlisted entries for this category, and the first covers work completed on Bishopton Aqueduct near Glasgow and was entered by Story Contracting. Now a scheduled ancient monument, the aqueduct is located between Bishopton and Langbank stations and was completed in 1840 for the Caledonian Railway's line to Greenock. Its purpose was to carry water from adjacent fields into a controlled drainage system. The aqueduct last received major attention in the 1950s, but survived the electrification of the route. However, in recent years, its condition has deteriorated, it was corroding and partly blocked with vegetation. Work began on a 2-month restoration project in February 2021. Work on the site was complicated by its inaccessibility, and careful preparation before work commenced was needed. Repairs were carried out on the cast iron structure with a new corrosion protection system applied to all the ironwork prior to the installation of a new waterproof system on the internal faces. GRP straps were installed to reduce the loading onto the existing cast iron deck plates. Most of the original stonework and inlet was in poor condition, and a new concrete inlet was constructed, together with extensive masonry repairs to the abutments and wing walls. The quality of the work on the structure is of a high standard, and although the large plastic pipe would not have been in the original design, it is needed to protect the overhead line. The attention to detail on the repaired cast iron longitudinal girders and the finished paintwork are the highlight of this entry and will ensure this structure will be in good condition for the foreseeable future. The second shortlisted entry for the award is for work undertaken at Doncaster Station over a number of years and was made by London North Eastern Railway. Although the station at Doncaster opened in 1848, the Grade 2 listed building was built by the London North Eastern Railway in the 1930s. Over recent years, it has benefited from a number of schemes that have substantially improved it. The most recent project, completed in July 2020, saw the removal of a canopy built in the 1970s and its replacement with a new canopy that provides a covered walkway to the bus station, the taxi rank and the shopping centre. Other work on the front elevation included replacement of the entrance doors and remedial work to the ashlar limestone blocks. As part of the overall project, the station concourse has been refurbished to replace substandard lighting with an energy-efficient system with new fittings befitting the period, also bringing back into use the light fittings that flank the concourse and the feature lighting that emphasises the Art Deco features on the ceiling. The restoration of Doncaster Station over the last 2 years by LNER, working closely with local authority, has transformed the appearance of the station and its environs and lives up to its role as gateway to the town. The final shortlisted entry for this award was entered by Transport for London and MTR and comprises the restoration of Hanwell Station. Originally opened in 1838 by the Great Western Railway, the original Brunel station was rebuilt for the quadrupling of the main line in 1877. The original main building on the downside was demolished a century later. The surviving buildings are listed at Grade 2. The building, though subject to some restoration several decades ago, had again fallen into a poor state, and work was needed to stabilise it and also provide step-free access to both platforms. Work began in 2018 on a 3-year programme to provide step-free access to the station and restore the original buildings. Apart from the installation of lifts that was cleverly incorporated into the existing buildings, the work also included repair and repainting and restoration of the original signage. Other work included restoration of all historic features in the stairwells, like the timber handrails and the cast iron balustrades, and a previously derelict area has been brought back into use as a waiting room, whilst the original fireplace has been retained and restored. Hanwell is an important station for its place in the evolution of the Great Western Main Line, and the people entrusted with this work have gone the extra mile to create something of which the local community can be proud. 3 very varied projects there, but the London Underground Operational Enhancement Award for 2021 is made to Transport for London and MTR for the work that they have completed at Hanwell Station and so would Peter Herridge and Nayo Bapodra from Transport for London, Michael Steele of ELM Site Services, and Christopher Machado and Martinson Barr from MTR please come up to join Edmund Bird, Heritage Manager of Transport for London, please. The Railway Heritage Trust Conservation Award is for the best restored listed or historic structure to which the Trust has contributed funding. We begin with the first of three very different entries, and this covers work undertaken at Newcastle Station, the restored gentlemen's lavatories entered by London North Eastern Railway. The station at Newcastle dates back to the late 1840s, but the wooden building that provides access to the gentlemen's lavatories dates to the early 1890s, when work was undertaken by William Bell to grow the station. The facilities provided were replaced during the 1950s and early 60s, but by the late 70s, the lavatories were out of use and had become a storeroom. And over the years, the condition of the space had deteriorated. In 2020, the entrance commenced a complete restoration of the lavatories. In the cubicles, the original doors and wooden surrounds have been renovated, and following trials, the paint scheme of dark brown door set in lighter brown surrounds matches the woodwork in the room. The toilet seats have been chosen to match the darker paintwork. The glazed brick walls have been thoroughly cleaned, and great care has been taken with the removal of old cisterns and location of the new. The terrazzo floor has been cleaned to a high standard, and great pains have been taken to extend the floor in front of the new urinals with pink terrazzo. Considerable thought has been given to the design of both the new urinals and sink units. This is based on those extant at the contemporary Birmingham Moore Street station. It's an imaginative scheme which has taken a rundown facility and through careful research and excellent workmanship has brought back into use a space that had stood unused for almost 5 decades. The second shortlisted candidate was entered by Govia Thameslink Railway for the restoration of the waiting shelter at Ockley in Surrey. The station at Ockley was opened by the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway in 1867, and the Grade 2 listed platform shelter, built of wood, dates from that year. It is believed to be one of the earliest structures of its type to survive. The condition of the shelter had deteriorated over the years, and in August 2020, a 2-month project was undertaken by the entrance to reverse this decline while upgrading the facility for the station's users. The work included removal of adjacent vegetation, the replacement or restoration of damaged and rotten timbers, upgrading of the light fittings, and replacement of polycarbonate glazed panels with toughened glass. Although a relatively small scheme, this project demonstrates excellent workmanship and attention to detail. The last candidate is the entry made by the training station for restoration work at Saltcoats. The first station at Saltcoats was opened in 1840, but the building that is the focal point for this entry dates to 1882, when the station was relocated by the Glasgow and South Western Railway. Although much of the station had benefited from earlier restoration work, there remained one large part of the B-listed main station building that was underused and in poor condition. Work began in November 2020 on a 6-month project to convert this space for use by the local karate club and as a facility for other community groups. Externally, the work included repairs to the stonework and remedial work to both doors and windows. A new entrance was inserted, which provides access via a small lobby to the main space. Many of the original internal finishes were lost over the years, but the project has saved parts of the internal building's history with the repair of the original decorative ceiling cornice and windows. 8 arched sash-and case windows were overhauled with new slimline double glazing, ironmongery, new cords, and repairs to the timber sills. The project has taken a building that was at risk of severe deterioration and turned it into a valuable community asset. It is a particular benefit of the scheme that it has inspired work for the ScotRail entrance and booking office to be undertaken. So, 3 very different kinds of conservation project. But I'm pleased to announce that the Railway Heritage Trust Conservation Award for 2021 goes to London North Eastern Railway for the superb work undertaken on the lavatories at Newcastle. And I'd like to invite Andy Wilcock and Mark Whitney from LNER up to the stage to receive the award from Jim Cornell, Chairman of the Railway Heritage Trust, please. Now we come to the Volunteers Award, sponsored by the Hendy and Pendle Trust. This award reflects the fact that many of the projects that we see, particularly on the heritage railways, rely on volunteers to raise the funding and often to undertake the actual physical work. And it's for this reason that this award is the only one that comes with a financial contribution to support the winning entry. We have 3 shortlisted entries for this special recognition of volunteers. And we start with the Spooner graves in the churchyard at St Mary's, Bethgelert, entered by the Welsh Highland Railway Heritage Group. Charles Easton Spooner was one of the most influential figures in the development of both the Festiniog and the North Wales narrow gauge railways. He, with members of his family and his daughter's nurse, are all buried together in the churchyard at Bethgelert. Recognising the historical importance of these Grade 2 listed graves, the Welsh Highland Railway Heritage Group undertook their restoration in 1998, which included repair of the iron railings that had been supplied by the Festiniog Railway's Boston Lodge Works. But 2 decades on, the condition of the graves was again a cause for concern. Following consultation with experts on the best approach to conserving the railings, they were stripped back and prepared with anti-rust paintwork. The memorial slabs on both graves were conserved and loose stone edgings were reinstated and secured. The work overall has been well thought through and executed, preserving interesting features that reflect railway history. The group should be commended for this initiative and for seeing it through to completion. The second of the shortlisted entries in this category was entered by the Halesworth to Southwold Narrow Gauge Railway Society for restoration of the goods shed at Blytheborough Station. Built by the Narrow Gauge Southwold Railway, the wooden-built goods shed at Blytheborough was completed in 1879. It was closed in 1929 and then used for agricultural purposes for a number of years. Once the shed's agricultural use ended, it was empty for many years, and as might be expected, its condition deteriorated. But in July 2019, work began on its restoration. As a result of delays due to COVID-19, work was only completed in December 2020. During the restoration, a great effort was made to use as much of the original timber and ironmongery as could be saved, this being an important aspect of the scheme's objective. And although the building is of simple construction, the extensive repair of the woodwork, which was essential to it, is almost undetectable. The building was painted with a bitumen finish, as are many traditional timber buildings in this area of East Anglia. And considering the state of the building before work commenced, the transformation is remarkable. Physical remains of the Southwold Railway are very few, and being timber, this shed could so easily have been lost, and so its restoration is all the more a cause for celebration. The third entry was made by the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway Community Interest Company for the restoration of Chelham Station. The station was built for the opening of the narrow gauge Lynton and Barnstaple Railway in 1898. The station closed in 1935 and the railway was dismantled. The station building's appearance changed in the mid-1950s when a single-storey extension was added to it to make it into a house. The signal cabin was relocated to facilitate the change of use, but was retained on site and became a storage shed. The site was acquired by the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway Group in 1999, and the station building was let out to members and then to railway employees until 2012. Work began on restoring the station in 2012, and over the past decade, the station building, platform, signal cabin, and signals have been completed. Externally, the work included repointing of the walls with lime mortar and work to the roof, including the casting of new tiles that matched the originals. Replacement hardwood doors were sourced, made to the original design. Internally, the original plaster was removed for remedial work to the walls before replastering and fit out with a ticket office partition, waiting room seating, and other facilities. A non-original fireplace and chimney have also been removed. Here, careful research has led to a first-rate and highly accurate historic restoration. The level of detail achieved is very impressive, and this has all been done and funded by a small group of volunteers, makes this all the more remarkable. 3 very different, very impressive volunteer schemes. But which caught the eye of our awards panel? Well, the winner of the Hendy and Pendle Trust Volunteers Award for 2021 is the Lynton and Barnstaple Railway Community Interest Company for their superb restoration of the station at Chelham. So would John Mawson and Nigel Thompson from the railway please join us on the stage to receive the award from from Peter Hendy and Steve Oates from the Heritage Railway Association. We move on now to the Network Rail Community Award. This award is designed to recognise the restoration, refurbishment or other improvement of a station or building either by a community group or for a community use that connects communities and promotes social inclusion. There are 4 shortlisted entries, and the first was made by Barhale and the City of Edinburgh Council for the refurbishment of the 3-arch Colt Bridge viaduct in Edinburgh. The viaduct was designed by Donald Matheson of the Caledonian Railway and opened in 1861 with the railway's branch to Granton. Passenger services over the line ceased in 1962, and freight traffic was withdrawn 5 years later. The viaduct was incorporated after closure into the Roseburn Railway foot and cycle path. A condition survey confirmed the degree to which its condition had deteriorated over the years. There was a need to rectify water penetration in the viaduct, and the correction of this involved inserting a membrane under the path, new and improved drainage facilities to prevent future recurrence of water damage. The viaduct's location created many logistical problems, but the results justify the resourcefulness of the solutions. Stonework, renewed where necessary, has been repaired using appropriate lime mortar and looks excellent, and it's hard to discern where the work has been undertaken. The access steps have also received careful attention. This is a very attractive project that ensures the continuance of an important repurposed structure. Its success, apart from the restoration, is in encouraging active travel, which has received double boost from the climate emergency and the pandemic. The second entry was made by Transport for Wales for the refurbishment of accommodation at Llandudno as part of the social and commercial development plan. The present station at Llandudno dates to 1892, when there was a major rebuilding there by the London North Western Railway for holiday traffic. The station's facilities were reduced from the late 1970s onwards, and much of the canopy was demolished in 1990. In 2014, the surviving structures underwent a further project funded by Network Rail. The project, undertaken almost a decade ago, made the building watertight, but it remained unoccupied. Starting in September 2020, the entrance undertook the fitting out of the accommodation to make it suitable for commercial occupation. Sadly, few historic features of the original design survived, but those that did have been successfully incorporated, the plan being amended to include them, and the resulting space is attractive, well-finished, and welcoming. The policy of finding uses for redundant station buildings being followed by Transport for Wales is really commendable. It has always been a difficult position, reconciling historic buildings and adapting them for use with today's railway and customer needs. And refurbishing rooms like this as commercial lettings brings in additional revenue and brings life and new use to historic stations. The third entry for this award was made by Saltash Town Council for the restoration of the station building at Saltash. Although the station was opened in 1859, the building is from the later 19th century. Railway use declined from the late 1960s, and subsequently it passed through a number of other uses. 20 years ago, there were plans for restoration, but these came to nothing. But eventually, public opinion, desirous of seeing it restored, led to the town council's decision to buy the building. And work began in March 2019 on an 18-month project for its restoration. Externally, the building retains its rendered finished and with all of its historic features conserved. The doors and windows are all new, as the originals were beyond repair, but they are well thought out and skillfully inserted. The positions of the awning beams are clearly apparent and cleverly incorporated into the colour scheme for the building. Internally, the ravages of time meant that little remained of the original details. The opportunity has been taken to create a new space that incorporates the few historic features like the chimney that did remain. This is a really clever reinvention of the station and something the residents and town council of Saltash should be proud. The community now has a splendid multi-purpose facility, a fitting neighbour to the famous historic railway bridge. The final entry was made by the Stow Community Trust for work completed at Stow Station in the Scottish borders. We've already met Stow once this morning, but let's remind ourselves about this entry. The station dated originally to the opening of the line from Edinburgh to Hawick in 1848. However, following closure of the line in 1969, it was converted for residential use. But the reopening of the line to Tweedbank in 2015 posed a real threat to the building's survival. But following a local campaign, decision was made to restore the structure to its original use. Work on the project began in January 2020 and was completed 18 months later. Externally, it included replacement of the rainwater goods with new cast iron fittings, repointing of the stonework, re-roofing using original material where available, and reinsertion of the original main doorway. In addition, one chimney stack was repaired while the other was dismantled and rebuilt. Internally, the surviving historic elements like the skirting, architraves and the working shutters in the station master's parlour have been carefully restored. The integration of the modern extension has been carefully handled, and the new work, the result of damage caused by an undetected flood from an attic tank which had caused rot in the roof timbers, has been sympathetically completed. This is an exemplar for how a railway building, no longer used for its original purpose, can be conserved and adapted for new use. And it would be difficult to think of a better approach than that demonstrated here at Stow. 4 very interesting projects, but which of this quartet has won the Network Rail Community Award? Well, this was the most difficult of the categories for the adjudicators to agree on, and as a result, it was decided to make 2 awards. So I'm pleased to be able to announce that the winners for 2021 for the Network Rail Community Award are firstly Saltash Town Council for the restoration of Saltash Station. So would Councillor Richard Bickford and Sarah Bickford from Saltash Town Council please make their way to the stage to receive their plaque from Scott Fisher from Network Rail. Thank you. And secondly, I'd like to invite Helen Corcoran from the Stow Community Trust up onto the stage to receive their award from Scott Fisher for their excellent work at Stow Station. We now come to the Southeastern Commercial Restoration Award. This award is for projects bringing a commercial use to a historic railway or tramway building or structure in any ownership. There are 3 shortlisted entries. The first of these is from Network Rail for the restoration of the main station building at Appledore in Kent. The Italianate-style station building, on the line between Ashford and Hastings was built in 1852 to a design by William Tress for the South Eastern Railway. The station was in use until 1996, after when it was closed and boarded up. The restoration project was conceived to remedy the effects of 25 years of neglect and create a building suitable for a small business tenant. Externally, the building has been locally repointed with lime mortar, matching the original, with timber, stonework and lead repairs to deal with rot and weathering and damage. The roof required replacement of the slates and new flashings. Redundant piping and cabling on the elevations has been removed, and the cast iron downpipes have been repaired or replaced. Internally, the timber floors were in poor condition, and so these were replaced using matching reclaimed materials alongside the original boards. And through the rooms on the ground floor, the internal render has been patched or replaced, and the covings and mouldings remade to match the originals. The timber panelling has been repaired and window frames restored to working order. The timber staircase and the upper floor balustrading has been renewed to match the originals. The overall impression is of a scheme that has been planned and executed with great care and respect shown to the history of the building while adapting it for a new life with a small business tenant. Our second shortlisted entry was made by Loft Co. for work done to convert a disused goods yard shed at Barry in South Wales for mixed commercial and residential use. The Hood Road goods shed was built by the Barry Railway in 1889 as part of the Barry No. 1 dock complex that was designed to serve the burgeoning South Wales coal business. As the importance of the docks declined, it gained a new prominence as location of the famous Wooden Brothers scrapyard, where so many steam locomotives were sent for scrap, many of them, of course, eventually being secured for preservation on heritage railways. But following the closure of the yard, the site was designated for redevelopment. The goods shed was an increasingly parlous state, and it was purchased by the local authority in the late 1990s. In March 2019, planning permission was given for the conversion of the goods shed and adjacent brownfield land. Externally, the work involved cleaning and repointing the brickwork, the repair and careful replacement of the cast iron rainwater goods, and the well-managed installation of new doors and windows. Other work included repair to the roof and the insertion of lights to provide natural light for the top floor accommodation. These blend in well and don't look out of place. Another notable feature is the use of redundant railway rolling stock and old containers to provide additional facilities. This is a fascinating project that has taken a derelict historic building and used it as the basis for a major redevelopment scheme that brings a derelict brownfield site back into use. And the location has now become a destination for days out in its own right. The third entry in this category was entered by Leo Dufeur and covers the conversion of part of Burnt Island Station in Fife as an artist studio for use by the entrant himself. The Grade C listed station at Burnt Island was rebuilt by the North British Railway in 1890 following the opening of the Forth Bridge. The building that forms this entry was completed around that time and was designed originally for use as the ladies' waiting room on the up platform. However, the building had fallen into disuse and a lot of internal deterioration had taken place. The lavatory at the eastern end was still used by staff, but it had become, frankly, a disagreeable experience. Fortunately, the entrant, a local artist, saw the potential for the conversion of the building into a studio for his own use, and with funding from the Railway Heritage Trust, conversion finally began in 2020. The work involved repairs to the roof and the doors and windows. Internally, most of the original features had been lost over the years, but here the work encompassed removal of internal partitions and the installation of wall insulation, flooring, rewiring, plumbing and redecoration. This is really an excellent example of cooperation and working in partnership. The conserved building is attractive, bursting with light and life from being dark, dank and forlorn. So, 3 more very impressive, very varied entries. But which of this trio whetted our adjudicators' appetite the most? Well, the winner of the Southeastern Commercial Restoration Award for 2021 is Network Rail for restoration of the station building at Appledore. And I'd like to invite Terry Denyer from Network Rail to join us on the stage to receive the plaque from Peter Stapleton, Head of Estates and Facilities for Southeastern. Thank you. We now come to the first of 2 new awards for 2021. And the first of these is for restoration work undertaken on a signal box. There are 3 shortlisted entries for this category, and the first is from Network Rail for work completed on the famous Severn Bridge junction box at Shrewsbury. Built in 1903, this Grade 2 listed structure has survived to become the largest remaining mechanical signal box anywhere in the world. Housing a magnificent parade of 180 levers, this London North Western Railway Type 4 box rises 3 stories high and is over 100 feet long. The box underwent a major restoration in 2010, but this left windows in their previous condition. The distinctive style of the fenestration with its deep sliding panes is a defining feature of LNWR signal boxes. Replacement of the sashes was a considerable undertaking. However, all of the new sliding windows have been replaced with new custom-made double-glazed units, meticulous care being taken to replicate the authentic dimensions with the details of the glazing bars and the mouldings. Timber fascias, soffits, and the horizontal lapboarding above and below the windows and on the gable ends have been fully refurbished and placed where necessary. And extensive repair work was also carried out on the external walkway. The array of new double-glazed windows makes quite a statement and will not only improve the working conditions within, but it also maintains the character of this world-renowned signal box. The second entry, again made by Network Rail, is for the restoration of Valley Signal Box near Holyhead in Anglesey. This box, also of London and North Western Railway origins, but of all wooden construction, dates to 1904 and is listed at Grade 2. Over the years, the original fenestration had been lost, and in April 2020, a 6-month project was undertaken to restore it to its original appearance while providing it with a more efficient glazing system. The external woodwork has been fully repaired and carefully repainted. On the roof, everything from the slate, ridges, barge boards, cappings to the timber finials is now in good condition. And a nice touch is the use of replica London, Midland and Scottish style name boards on the gable ends. At the insistence of the local conservation officer, Windows, the original pattern, were reinstated. Albeit now double glazed, these look the part with their traditional profiles and proportions, and moreover, they also slide, as at Shrewsbury. This is a project that has restored a historically important and still operational box, and the result has been to enhance and maintain an established and much-loved part of the townscape at Valley. The final one of these three was entered by Colt Construction Limited and covers work undertaken on the former North Eastern Railway box at Wylam to the west of Newcastle. The Grade 2 listed box dates to 1897 and is one of two similar overline boxes to survive on the Newcastle to Carlisle line. The box last underwent major refurbishment in 2003, but its condition deteriorated in recent years. The most extensive work required was the replacement of rotten woodwork, in particular the windows, and to ensure its durability, a coir was specified. The windows at Wylam are well made, and with the sound and thermal insulation that they incorporate, they make the box a more pleasant place in which to operate. Additional work was undertaken to the roof and the rainwater goods. Internally, the box was fully redecorated, including the seat once occupied by George Stephenson when he visited the town of his birth. The original steep access steps have been retained, and the exterior has been fully repainted. This and the work undertaken at the similar box at Hexham have restored to good condition two of the more unusual boxes to survive on the national network. They are a wonderful reminder of traditional signal boxes, and the work should ensure that they survive to be admired for many years to come. Three very different signal boxes, I think you'll agree, all facing issues of conservation, but only one can win. Unfortunately, it's not been possible for all of the entrants to attend. So to receive the award on behalf of Network Rail, I'd like to invite James Walsh to come up the stage to receive the plaque from Andy Savage, acting chairman of the awards, for the superb work done at Severn Bridge Junction in Shrewsbury. We now come to the second additional award, which covers three small but locally important and visually very individual and significant schemes. There are three shortlisted entries for this award. The first was made by Network Rail and covers restoration of the station clock at Bognor Regis. The Grade 2 listed station was built in 1902 to the designs of the London, Brighton and South Coast Railways architect C.D. Collins, a good example of the company's more grandiose designs for town stations at that time. The condition of the clock tower, however, had declined and the clock was no longer functioning, a cause of much local complaint, because the clock is a prominent feature as you approach the station. In February 2020, work started on a 10-month programme to restore the cupola and restore the clock to operation. It's required extensive repairs to the lead work, which has been carried out to a very high standard. The face surrounds and metal frame were resealed and new perspex covered installed. The white clock faces had become distorted and concave, so they were straightened and supported from behind. One hand was missing, and so new hands has been sourced and installed, and internally a new digital controller, power supply and connecting rods were sourced and fitted to the refurbished gears, restoring the clock to full working order. This scheme brings back into use a facility that local residents and station users appreciate, and it was and is now again an integral part of the streetscape in Bognor. The second project, again entered by Network Rail, features the canopy at Chippenham Station in Wiltshire. This Grade 2 listed station was opened by the GWR in 1841, though the current building dates to the end of the following decade. The main building has a small but distinctive cantilevered canopy, but the structure had developed problems and required attention. Once work started, the full extent of the deterioration became apparent, and straightforward replacement was deemed to be impractical, so the solution adopted involved strengthening the timber structure by the creation of 3 ladder frameworks linked to the existing rafters. Externally, the work is very impressive. Where timber has been replaced, care has been taken to ensure that it matches the original. The roof surface is a modern compound, but only the edges of this are visible from ground level. The tie rods had to be aligned to the canopy, and this tricky task was successfully achieved. Now, passengers using the station will probably take the reinstated canopy for granted, but this is a really fine restoration of this important historic feature, an outcome which could only have been achieved with high-quality input from the clients, the designers, and the contractors. The final entry was made by the Bittern Line, Community Rail Partnership, Greater Anglia, and Dura Composites for the running-in board at West Runton in Norfolk. The running-in board at West Runton was built from concrete in 1921 by the Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway, and it is believed to be the only remaining example of its kind on the national network. The work included the removal of remaining wooden lettering, stripping down the paint back to bare concrete, researching and manufacturing new lettering in modern glass-reinforced polymer, affixing the new lettering to paneling without drilling into the structure. Fortunately, the original concrete elements were found to be in good condition. The attention and care lavished on the board is very worthwhile, and it has real visual appeal. Its condition is a credit to those at the original concrete factory in Melton Constable, and its restoration is a credit to those who've undertaken this. A trio of contrasting projects epitomising the view that small is beautiful. Only one, however, can win, and so would Martin Halliday, Daniel Wright, and Tim Miller from Bittern Line Community Rail Partnership, Greater Anglia, and Dura Composites please join me to receive the plaque for the work on the running-in board at West Runton from Andy Savage. We now come to 2 special awards. The first of these, the Theo Steele Award, named in honour of our late chairman, is made to a project of special significance. And I'm pleased to announce that the winner is the Cholsey and Wallingford Railway for the successful transfer of the overall roof from Maidenhead to Wallingford. Before I invite the railway's representatives onto the stage to receive their award, let's spend a few minutes looking at the project. Originally built at Maidenhead Station in the mid-19th century, when the Great Western Railway was still broad gauge, the wooden train shed or canopy was threatened with loss as a result of the electrification of the main line west from Paddington. With support from the Railway Heritage Trust, the bold scheme to dismantle the structure and rebuild it at the Heritage Railway's Wallingford station was developed. In late 2014, following the dismantling of the shed, the railway took delivery of a kit of parts which were assessed for use in a restoration project, but it was not until 2018 that the actual restoration commenced. Some of the original fabric had been severely damaged during demolition and delivery, with the result that following research, replacement material had to be sourced. Smaller components like nails, bolt, tie bars and originals were supplemented with handmade components the same design, even ensuring that the bolts had the same thread pitch. And as a result, there is hardly any visible evidence that the necessary repair work has been undertaken, such as the quality of the restoration. Of particular note is the quality of the final paintwork, which also demonstrates the quality of the underlying surface preparation. Redundant columns from Burnham Station have been reused, integrated into the relocated structure. None of the original roof coverings were available for the restoration, but the opportunity was taken to install a longer-lasting composite panel system with integrated glazing. This is a superb project which has taken a structure that might so easily have simply been demolished, given that it was unlisted, and provided it with a new home. Its restoration has, in the words of one of the judges, resulted in the canopy probably looking better than at any other time in its 150-year history. So now, would Tony Stead from the Chelsea and Wallingford Railway please step forward to receive their special award from Gareth Steele, Hannah Steele, and Hannah Steele representing their late father Theo, in whose name this award is made. Our final award this morning, the Greater Anglia Award, is given to what the Awards Committee judge to be the best entry in any category. The selection of the best entry each year is difficult. There is always, as we've seen, so many excellent schemes. But I'm pleased to announce that this year's overall winner goes to TransLink for the creation of the Northwest Multimodal Transport Hub in Londonderry or Derry, Northern Ireland. Again, before asking the entrants up to receive their award, let's examine the project. Waterside Station was one of 4 terminal stations in Derry or Londonderry, but as a result of closures of the other railways, it was the only one remaining in operation by 1965. The station was built by the Belfast and Northern Counties Railway between 1873 and 1875, designed by the Belfast architect Charles Lanyon. The station was severely damaged by terrorist bomb attacks in the 1970s, and as a result, the building closed in 1980. A small station was opened adjacent to the old building to allow a basic service to continue, and the former station building was used for a time as a retail warehouse following the removal of the platforms and track. In 2016, TransLink decided that the building should be restored for use as a railway station and become the central point of a new transport hub for the city. The masonry exterior and the train shed roof have been expertly restored, the former by the replacement of weathered sandstone and repointing, which has been done with particular attention to the original details. A modern block has been added to replace the structure that was installed after bomb damage in the 1970s. The clock mechanism has been restored and digital chimes added which strike on the quarter hours. The interior of the building has been thoughtfully planned and refurbished to a very high standard. There's a snack bar, shop and toilet facilities. There's good information signage for passengers and good seating and waiting areas. This project is the culmination of a £27.5 million development scheme that has reopened the original LMS NCC station. Excellent workmanship and attention to detail are evident throughout. It's a superb building that has been restored to the city, which again has a station worthy of its location, worthy of itself. So to receive the Greater Anglia Award for the best entry in 2021 for the North West Regional Transport Hub, I'd like to invite Gary McCluskey and Paul Denvere of Translink to join us to receive the plaque from Richard Turner, Head of Asset Management for Greater Anglia.
Thank you, Stephen, for the presentation, and my congratulations to all the winners. This competition takes place with a lot of work from a lot of people, and they all have one thing in common: they're all volunteers. So I want to thank them all, my fellow trustees and committee members, the judges and the adjudicators for all the work they put into making this happen. I particularly also want to thank the sponsors. You all know who you are, and you all get fed up with me coming around every year and asking you to sponsor the awards again. But without your support, this event couldn't happen, this competition couldn't happen. Thank you all very much. It's 2 years since we were last together, and there have been some changes in the organisation. John Ellis stood here 2 years ago and announced his retirement. And John, it's great to see you here today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've come up to your standard. Chris Smythe is also retired as a trustee, and we have 2 new trustees, Steve Oates from the Heritage Railways Association and Jerry Swift, who's joined us as secretary and has been busy working hard feeding the plaques through today. We've had some judges retire, Alan Damerel and Duncan Wheeler, and Marilyn Palmer has retired as an adjudicator, and our thanks to them. And sadly, one of our judges, Richard Tinker, also formerly Secretary of the Railway Heritage Trust, has also died in the last 2 years. On the organisational front, Robin Leleur has stood down as Chairman of the Adjudicators, and Gavin Johns has taken over that role. And Mike Stanbury has stood down as Secretary, and Jerry has taken that role over. My thanks to all of you for your contribution over many years. I'd like to also thank Andrew Haynes for coming and invite him to say a few words. So.
Thank you very much for your warm words, Andy, and for your welcome today. Those of you who know me well will know that architectural history is my love, so it feels a bit rich being paid to turn up here today. And it's also great to see some live-in members of Railway Heritage in the audience as well. Monuments of a different sort, maybe. Andy mentioned that I had the joy of sharing an office for about 9 months or so with Theo back over 30 years ago now. So let me also add my tributes to his and my condolences to Gareth and Peter and Hannah and the family. We will all miss Theo's contribution to our industry. We can't quite live up to the merchant tailors, can we? I think they've been here 1337. So, we've got a few years to go, but we are, of course, approaching 2025, an event that we absolutely want to mark as of real significance, although as somebody born within spitting distance of the first locomotive run some 20 years before that, I do like to remind the Stockton and Darlington Railway that they're relative latecomers to the industry. But we absolutely want to ensure that we collectively recognise that enormous milestone, because the railways are a fundamental part of Britain's economic and social history, and we absolutely want that to be as true for the next 200 years as it has been for the last two. And of course, if we are serious about that, we have to recognise our past, and these awards are an absolutely fantastic way of demonstrating that. It is a burden sometimes, it is a challenge. Heritage is not a cheap hobby for anyone involved in it, but it's an important one. It's absolutely important that we maintain our railway assets to the very highest standards, and indeed that we showcase the quality of craftsmanship, contractors, design, asset management that are part of what actually engenders pride in our railway system, not just for those of us who work or once worked here, but also those who are stewards and partners and community agents. Of course, the railway represents enormous range of architectural styles, from sort of cottage ornate to brutalist to, on my notes here say Tudor. I don't think we're quite that old. I think it means mock Tudor, to Art Deco, but something almost close to 1,500 assets which are listed. Over 600 viaducts and bridges, 380 listed station buildings, 67 signal boxes, almost as many tunnels, memorials, gates, clocks. We've seen some of them already this morning, haven't we? And it gives us some idea of the scale of the challenge we have. We are blessed with an embarrassment of historical riches, and we must continue to take that duty very, very seriously. And we've seen, brilliantly illustrated this morning, the range of tasks from that modest station at Auckley and the gents' toilets at Newcastle right the way through to iconic structures like a Ribblehead Viaduct. Every one of them has intrinsic cultural value that we have a duty to cherish. And of course, we have to do that in a way that makes it accessible to the 21st century as well. And I'm personally committed and would encourage all of you to think about how we continue to blend a world-class railway heritage with a system that is accessible to all in Britain in the 21st century. It absolutely will be one of our fundamental challenges as we grow, as we seek to continue to grow our railway system and make it all the more inclusive. So it just remains to me to say thank you to everyone who has put enormous effort into our railway system, particularly over the last 2 years when we weren't able to celebrate in person last year. This is enormously the work of volunteers. It's the work of people who are passionate way beyond their normal day job or responsibility. It's the work for people who care about our built environment and who care about our railways. And we all owe you a real debt of gratitude. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Andrew, for the speech, for coming, and also thank you for the support that you in Network Rail give us as the Railway Heritage Trust, my day job. I greatly appreciate all the support I get, not just financial, but both Sir Peter and Andrew's personal commitment to our built heritage. It's invaluable to all of us. you gave us a speech last year and we gave you a book, so we had to change the plans, but fortunately we planned for that and we published another book on our 40 years, so can I give you this, please, Andrew? The final part of the event is the handing out of the certificates to the highly commended entries. Jerry will come over here and announce them. Can you please come up, photo, and then the next people will hopefully be coming up by the time you go so that we can get through to the lunch, which I'm sure you're all waiting for.
Thank you very much, Andy, and good morning, everybody. Before we start on the certificates, can I just say that for those who've won plaques, there will be some padded envelopes so that you can take them home rather more easily on the table at the entrance on your way out later this afternoon. So I'd like to now invite the shortlisted entrants to come up to the stage to receive their certificate. First, the team from Network Rail for Pembroke Dock. Do we have anybody from Pembroke Dock? Next, the representatives from Stowe Community Trust for Stowe. Next, Network Rail and Colt Construction for Hebden Bridge, please. And Network Rail and Colt Construction for Huddersfield. And now the Irish Rail team, please, for Dublin Broadstone. Okay, we'll post that one on later. And Network Rail for the work on Paddington Transept. Next, the Severn Valley Railway Charitable Trust for Falling Sands Viaduct. Network Rail for the Ribblehead Viaduct, please. Next, Story Contracting for Bishopstone Aqueduct in Glasgow. Next, the team from London North Eastern Railway for Doncaster. Go via Thameslink Railway for Ockley. Next, the training station for Saltcoats. I believe John Yellowlees is going to step up for this one. Next, the Welsh Highland Railway Heritage Group for the graves at Bethgelert. Next, the Halesworth to Southwold Narrow Gauge Railway Society for the goods shed at Blytheborough. Next, Bar Hale and the City of Edinburgh Council for the viaduct at Coltbridge. Next, the team from Transport for Wales for Llandudno. Sorry. Next, Loftco for the goods shed at Barry. And moving on, next, Johnny Lalise is going to collect on behalf of Leo Defer for the Artist Studio at Burnt Island. Next, Network Rail for the signal box at Valley. Next, Colt Construction and Network Rail for Wylam Signal Box. Next, Network Rail for the Clock Tower at Bognor Regis. And finally, for the canopy at Chippenham, the team from Network Rail.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you again all for your entries. That concludes the formalities. Lunch will be served and hope to see many of you and have a chat with you over lunchtime. And as always, it's the start of the Christmas season with this event, so my best wishes to you all for a very happy Christmas. Thank you.